Welcome back to our ongoing mixing series where we'll be mixing a song all the way from the beginning to a finished mix. And we are now currently doing the heavy lifting, so the processing with all of our tools such as EQ, compression, saturation, reverb, delay, etc. And in this video, we're going to cover the drums. Hey yo, it's Alex from Edifying Music, and as always with this channel, it's my mission to help you, the artist, produce themselves by developing their mindset, expanding their creativity, and connecting to their music in a different way. So let's go ahead and transition back to the DAW, back to where we left off from the last video. If you haven't seen the last video, definitely check out the previous videos in this series as we've gone through every single step of the mix up to this point, and we will continue all the way to the finish line as we finish up this mix. So let's listen to where this mix is at, and we're going to move on to processing the drums. All right, so that's where we left off. Things are already sounding quite good, but now we're gonna dive deeper into the drums. We covered the bass, so we kind of got the low end under control, but now let's open up our drum group and take a look at what is going on. So first, before we dive into every individual track here, I should mention that on our drum bus, I do have an EQ where I am boosting a little bit, about 3 dB at 8K to bring out some of that shine, that attack. I'm boosting maybe 2 dB around 2K or so, just to bring out the attack of the snare, a little bit more energy. I am cutting a little bit around 500 hertz or so. I might reduce that, and I'm boosting around 200. And this was doing some pre-mixing before I actually bounced this down into several different tracks, but I kind of liked how it sounded. And then I also have a compressor just acting like glue to glue all these elements together. So I'll A/B what this sounds like before we jump into every track individually. So let's solo the drums, and I'm gonna turn off this processing and we'll listen to these things. So this is just the drums by themselves. Let's turn on the EQ. And let's turn on that compressor. Just going to make sure that this compressor is the same volume. So it kind of brings out the attack of all the individual elements. It kind of glues them together. So now let's continue and look at our kick. So that's our kick sound. And I'm going to listen to this with the bass. All right, so the first thing I'm going to reach for is just an EQ to actually kind of sculpt out some stuff. So let's just go for an Ableton EQ8. This is a great EQ that's built into Ableton. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to try and cut out some low end of the kick that we don't need. So notice if I cut out all the low end of the kick, it loses its oomph. Right about 80 hertz here. Let's A/B this. I can barely tell a difference with the EQ on or off. So let's A/B this. So it's with it off. On. So notice how cutting out some low end of the kick has actually made it more clear, because there's less low end frequencies that are competing with the bass. So it's kind of poking out and has its own space to live in. What I'm also going to do is boost around this low end and see if there's any frequencies that are kind of masking with the bass. So notice how boomy that frequency is. I might take that a little bit down. Let's boost another one. gonna reduce the Q on this. So right here, so let's A/B this. Notice how much low end is in the kick here. So that's sounding good. Next, I'm going to reach for a different EQ. So I'm going to go into my plugins, audio units, waves. We're going to go with the SSL channel, and we're going to go with mono. And now I'm going to try and bring out some character and maybe compress this a little tiny bit. So first and foremost, I'm going to bring out some attack by boosting around 8K or so. So let's bypass it. This is with it off. Next, I'm going to try and find the boxy frequency. Usually there's a boxy frequency in drums. I'm just going to scan around and check. So I'm going to boost quite a bit. I'm going to look around different frequencies and see if we have anything unpleasant around the 500 to 700 hertz range. So right around 400 hertz, there's kind of this like bubbly, boxy thing. So I'm going to cut some of that out. So let's A/B the whole EQ. This is with it off. With it on. Get a lot more character out of that kick drum. Next, what I heard is around 1K, there was something pleasant. So I'm going to use this other band and I'm going to boost around 1K here. That kind of thump. I kind of like that. So I'm boosting around 4K. Let's bypass the whole EQ. With it on. A lot more clarity, a lot more oomph, a lot more attack. And then I might also play around with 200 hertz, although there's a ton, if we look here on this EQ, there's a ton of low end information. But I might boost around 200 hertz because there was some low end presence there that I liked, which is not competing too much with the bass. Might throw the bell switch on. To bypass the whole EQ. Turn it on. I might actually cut out some of this some more. Hear all that low end? Let's cut some of that out. So that's sounding good. Let's actually move on. I don't think that this needs any kind of compression, but what we can do is we set up a parallel compression bus in our previous video. So what we can do is actually send some of the signal to the parallel compression and see how it reacts and see how it sounds with the bass. Let's bring it up. I'll change views so we can see it more clearly. So here's our kick track, and I'm going to bring up the send E to send to this parallel compression bus and see how it sounds. So I kind of like the added energy that that gives. So I'm going to A/B this. I'm going to turn it off. So this is what it sounds like without it. Let's turn it on. Kind of has that low end pulse, that extra oomph. So I'm going to leave that as it is. And let's continue moving on to our snare. So let's switch views. The kick is sounding good. Let's throw on the snare. So I should mention that the snare is actually being sent. If we go to this other view, this is our snare track. We're sending both to a short verb and a long verb just for the snare that we set up in the last video. So I'll solo the snare so you can hear that. So this is without the reverbs. I'm gonna throw in the short one. Throw on the long one. If I bring this up, you'll hear it. Hear that long room. Just want a taste of that long tail. Alternatively, we can bring up a little bit of send to D. Just to add some more body to that snare. And let's go back to the snare track. So the first thing I'm going to reach for again is an EQ. So let's go to our audio effects, EQ 8. And let's bring back in the kick and the bass. First thing I'm going to do again is take out any low end that we don't need. And that is something that you'll see me do a lot, is take out anything that is unnecessary for any sound. So whether it's low end or high end information, we did that on the kick, right? So the snare, you don't need anything sub 100 Hertz. There's not going to be much here. So let's just cut it out to remove any low end frequencies that might be there. So this is with it on, turn it off. I can barely notice any difference. All right, let's boost around, see if there's any conflicting frequencies. So around this, it's kind of a resonant peak here around 200, which might compete with the kick, but let's just hear how it sounds if we cut it a little bit out. Take it off. And let's play around with maybe a high shelf. Sometimes it's nice to add a little bit high end to the snare. Going to boost this low end here. All right, that's sounding pretty good. And what I might do with the snare is actually play around with that parallel compression as well. So again, snare, we're going to play around with this E send and listen to how it sounds. All right, so that's sounding good, and we can play around with these things as we start adding more elements in. We might need to reduce that, add more, EQ it some more, depending on how the other elements are interacting. So let's throw in this hi-hat. First thing I'm gonna go for again is the EQ. Throw in the low cut. We do not need anything probably all the way up to, okay, 1000 Hertz. Cut out all that low end. Sometimes there's some harshness in the mids. Let's scan for that. And let's play around with a shelf. So I'm cutting out some high-end content there because I feel it's a little bit bright, and depending on how everything else is interacting, we have a lot of pads, we have a lot of crazy cascading effects, and that stuff is very bright, so we might not need a bright hi-hat. So let's roll with this. Let's A-B the EQ first though. This is with it on. Take it out. So it just kind of mellows it out. I might actually turn down the volume of the hi-hat a little bit. All right, let's move on to the crash. Let's loop a section with the crash. Just gonna pop on an EQ, and you can guess I'm going to cut out any low end. cut out some of this frequency. And I might add in some high end. Let's A/B this with it off. On. I might bring up the volume a little bit. Again, it just kind of mellows it out. Let's continue with the ride. Same section. EQ8. Again, let's throw on a high pass filter. Cut some of this out just to kind of smooth out the cymbals. However, on this, the ride, I might boost a little bit here because there's some nice airiness to the room it's in. Hear that airiness? That's kind of what I want. So let's A/B the whole thing. This is with its off and on. I might turn it up a smidge. Again, all of these things can change. Turn it up, down a little bit. Cool, let's move on to the toms. The first tom, let's find a section with tom, the chorus here. Again, I'm just going to highlight this and loop it here. And just loop it very close. I'm going to grab the EQ. Again, I'm going to cut out any low end that we don't need. Probably don't need anything sub 100. So I cut out a little bit around 700 hertz or so. I might shorten this Q a little bit just to take out some of this boxiness. And I boosted a little bit of the low end around 200 hertz just to give a little bit more roundness to the low end. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, bring in the second tom, paste it, and do a very similar thing, but maybe lower. Because fun fact, the bigger drum you have, the lower pitched frequency it's going to have, right? So the bigger your toms get, the floor tom, is going to be a lower pitch. So I'm probably going to lower this and have to boost and cut at a lower frequency. So let's do that with the second tom. So I'm going to cut around here. And I'm going to boost around 150. So with it on, off. So notice how it brings a little bit more life, a little bit more body to those drums. All right, so let's go to verse and let's bring in everything to just check how things are sounding right now. All right, let's solo the drums and bass. I might lower this ride a tiny bit. Let's play from here. Again, lower this ride. All right, that's sounding good. Let's move to a different section with a different bass tone. I'm going to turn down this bass. I might turn down the kick a little tiny bit. Let's go back to this verse. So that's what our parallel sounds like. Let's just solo these returns. They're sounding good to me. I might turn up this parallel compression a little bit. Reverb on the snare. I might, just for fun, add a saturator to our parallel compression here and just have fun to see what it sounds like. So I'm gonna go to Sound Toys. Decapitator is always a fun one. And let's play around with maybe a crazy preset. Drums. The room driver can be cool. Adds a tiny little bit of brightness. I might leave that there for now. I might play around with it some more later. And right now, our bass and drums are sounding mighty tight. And hey, if you're just getting started with music production and feeling completely overwhelmed by the process, or if you've been at this for a while and are having trouble finishing tracks, or if you just want to get a glimpse inside my personal workflow, I've created a super easy to follow 7-step framework that helps you go from your very first idea all the way to a finished mix and master. And it's super handy to have around the studio as a printout. So if you're interested in grabbing that, you can find it in the description box below. If you got value out of this video, give me a thumbs up. If you want to stay in tune for the next MetaMind Music Transmission, hit that subscribe button as we move forward and continue to go through this mix all the way to the finish line. We just finished the processing on the bass and the drums. And in the next video, we're going to move on to the guitars. So if you're stoked for the next video, I'll see you in the next one.